Yo, quick Blender tutorial for you. Um, so Blender, unlike Maya, it uses Shift to navigate. So just replace your muscle memory with Shift and Alt. Scroll in and scroll out work the same. If you hold Control, you can zoom in like this. Um, it's based on where your mouse is. Blender has this neat thing called a 3D cursor, where you can hold Shift and hit right click and it'll move around. And if you combine that with like some stuff like selection to cursor, you can quickly snap stuff. Moving around in Blender, the transform stuff, the hotkeys are R for rotate, G for grab, and S for scale. So R, G, S. Blender is very hotkey based, so you don't need to use a manipulator if you don't want to. But what you can do is type in the axis that you want. So if I hit grab and I only want to move it up and down, that'll be the Z axis. If you hit G, then Z, it'll lock it based on that axis. Same thing with GX, GR, GY, as well as RZ, RY, RX. And you can also exclude axes if you hit Shift and move stuff around. So if you want to use a manipulator, you can open up this transform menu. But everything I do in Blender, I pretty much turn it off because I don't need the manipulator because I can just quickly move stuff around. If you want freeform rotate, you can just hit R twice, RR, and it'll rotate based on the view. Yeah. What else? So if you are bringing in a rig for the first time, you're gonna want to go to File and Link. I'm just gonna pull up a rig. Let's see. Linking is pretty much referencing in Maya. So if I'm gonna link in, I'm just gonna grab a rig. Actually, I'll just grab one of the work rigs. You're going to want to go to collection, which is pretty much the group, then grab the master. So when you add an object, it's going to spawn where the 3D cursor is. So if you want to fix that, you can hit Shift S cursor to world origin, and it'll just pop back to normal. So when you link in an object, it's going to be uneditable. So we're going to make what's called a library override, which pretty much lets you edit the rig data. In this case, if you go to object, where's it, library override make. Now you can see this, you can open up the collection. You can also run that by selecting the master, then hit F3 and type in override. Then it should be the one that says make library override. So Blender has a few different modes. There's object modes, pose mode, edit mode, draw mode for grease pencil stuff. For animation's sake, we're going to want to go into pose mode, which the hotkey is Shift Tab, and that changes all the bone colors. So by default, the rig layers aren't visible because they are tied to a script. You can either save this file and reopen it, or you can run the script manually by selecting the body script rig UI and hitting run. And this will bring up these view layers for you. And for this sake, I'm just going to turn on these ones because I don't need anything else. Intro to keyframing in Blender. There's things called keying sets, which are you designate what's being keyframed in Blender. By default, it's nothing. So when you try setting a keyframe with the I hotkey, you're going to get this menu. I for insert keyframe. If you don't want to see this menu, you can just designate the keyframe. I usually go by location, rotation, and scale, and custom properties. So what that means is if I set a keyframe, things like the IK switches are going to get keyed as well. So if I'm going to pose this character, I'm going to turn on auto key, which is right here, this blue dot. The dopesheet functions like the timeline in Maya, but better, because you can see all your controls and offset things a lot easier. If you want to swap between the dopesheet and the graph editor, the hotkey is Shift Tab. And I'm just going to pose her out. So there's a few cool pivot point things that you can change in Blender. So by default, it's median point, which rotates based on the middle of your two selections. There's individual origins, which will rotate based on the selected controls origin. There's bounding box, which is pretty much the same as median point, and active element, which pretty much I use the most. If you want to access these pivot points, they are from this drop-down menu here, or you can hit the period button. And what active element lets you do is it lets you rotate based on your last active selection. So if I grab the IK arm, if I wanted to move it like FK, I can grab both these controls and rotate it like that. But the hand is still an IK, which is pretty handy. Otherwise, it also works based on how last selection works in Blender is you can deselect an object, but it'll still register as the last selection. That means you can move stuff based on pivot points that aren't necessarily moving. So if you wanted to do a flip, for example, you can do something like that. What else is there? There is this, which is the orientation modes. I pretty much leave it to global by default, because if you need the local access, you can hit, let's say I want to rotate it in local X. Just double tap the axis. Let me make this example a bit easier. So if I just wanted to twist her, right? In the local axis, if I hit R then double Z, that's just going to rotate based on the local Z axis instead of the world axis, which is 1. Click. Another thing that's pretty handy is that you can copy paste poses very easily, and you can mirror them easily too. So copy is just Control C, Control V, right? But if you hit Control Shift V, you're mirroring the pose, which Maya can't do unless you have a mirror table built in with a third-party add-on. You can also turn on, where is it? This X thing in the top right. This is mirror. What's this? Axis mirror. If you want to pose stuff like that. This drop-down menu is called the Quick Favorites. You can right-click anything that you want. So if I wanted this, I'll hit Assign to Quick Favorites. Then it'll show up whenever I hit I press the Q menu. now it's just a toggle that I can access. Things I have mapped to there is like playblast, turn off overlays, and some pretty much like animate operators. If I just get some keys on here, if you have auto key enabled and hit the spacebar, you can just live record for some mocap. So the graph editor in Blender by default is pretty zoomed out. Home lets you view all the keys. Period on the numpad zooms into the selection. I usually work in normalize just to see the curves better. If you're in the graph editor, you can hold control and zoom in by moving it up, and zoom wide by moving it horizontal, all while holding control. So if I wanted to just find the curves or isolate a specific curve, if I wanted the up and down, how you would do this is you'd select either the name of the curve or a key on the curve. It's an active selection, and hit Shift H to isolate, which is the hide and unhide operators. So now you can just edit the curve if you want. This is like normal Maya. Cool things about Blender is there's proportional editing, which is like soft select, and you can increase you can turn it on by hitting O and increase the fall off by scrolling your mouse wheel. So if I want to like tweak these curves and edit data in bulk, this is super handy. Let's see, there is the curve filters or the curve operators from like Animbot. They're built into Blender now. So if you hit Alt-D, these are the different curve filters. Breakdown is Tween Machine. Blend to Neighbor is self-explanatory. Ease, Blend to Default. Blend to Offset is Blend to Infinity in Maya. So where is it? No, Match Slope is. Yeah, Blend to Infinity. Match Slope, I believe, does something else that I don't really remember. But yeah, push pull. Time offset's nice if you just want to offset stuff, but don't want to tweak where your keys are. Yeah, stuff like that. This is the snapping. Keyframe snapping if you want like fractional frames or not. Yeah, this is it. So if I'm gonna pose her out like she's waving, I'll move this over here, turn off x-axis mirror. This is usually how I work. So you can see like it's pretty fast with how fast you can pose things. If you know what the buttons are. If you have multiple skeletons like this character, you can just go to object mode, which is Control Tab, and select both skeletons and hit Control Tab again, and both will be in pose mode. I need the face rig operator to see her face controls. If I wanted to pose her face, there's different viewport shading modes. Matcaps are like colorful overlays you can slap on the characters. Texture mode is here. I usually go, since we do anime stuff, we have some presets that look like this, which is you're just tweaking these values to make it easier to see. Some important add-ons to enable. Some of these you'll have to scour on the internet, but the most important one is selection sets, which we use a lot. Pretty much, if you enable it, if you go to the green skeleton here in pose mode, and on this drop-down menu where it says selection sets, you can select controls and add them with the plus button and hit assign and make selection sets. And the hotkey for this is Shift Alt W. So those are quick and easy ways to get a selection set without having to click anything, and it's super fast. This x-axis mirror comes in handy when you're animating a face. If you want to zero out the bones you have selected, all you need to do is hit Alt-R for clear rotations, Alt-G for clear grab, and Alt-S for reset scale. Yeah. Otherwise, like, the actual animation part is pretty self-explanatory. Right. Say for example, if I'm animating like a ball bounce, if you want to duplicate, it's you select whatever and hit Shift D and move it. Then you can hit X to lock on the X-axis or the Y-axis. So if you want to make these linear, there's interpolation modes, and there's also keyframe handle types. Interpolation modes affects the entire curve or selection, like Maya, and it usually works like on the left side and right side. I mainly use keyframe handle types more, so it'll affect the handles of the curve rather than the keyframes. It's a weird distinction, but it's kind of handy. So if I was to change the keyframe handle type to vector, it'll look like it's linear in Maya. Auto clamp is like normal auto tangent. Automatic is like spline tangent. Free tangent lets you move stuff like this and just break curves if you want. If you animate in weighted tangent in Maya, then by default Blender is super easy for you because you can just scale keyframes, handles like this. Otherwise, all the operators in the graphic work the same as the viewport. So locking the axes with Y and X, rotating if you want, scaling it if you want, and there's all the pivot points work here as well. So if you wanted to scale just the handles, you can do that. If you want the cursor, you can do this. If you want the bounding box, just scale like that. So it makes editing data in the graph editor a lot easier as well. If I wanted to go in FK, right now off the bat it's in IK mode, so it's not going to work. So these rig main properties is where the switching windows are. So if I change this from IK to FK, now the arm should work. Um, how I usually move these around is free rotate for these, and then the elbows I just hit, or I hit R, then double X, so that it doesn't move in any weird axis. These buttons are the snapping menus, so FK to IK, we'll do that. IK to FK, we'll bring the IK to the FK, stuff like that. If I wanted to like space switch, these numbers beside the IK parents is the space switching menu. This skeleton is rigified, by the way. One of the most common Blender skeletons because it's an auto rigger, and it's the one we use for our studio. So by default, the parent for these IKs are set to chest, but you can change it to whatever you want from this menu. So if you want the arms to be independent, you can set it to torso if you want, or if you want world space, you can do root. And this is keyable. So if I want to change the space in one frame, you can click this and hit torso, and it only applies that for one frame. And you can see this little gear. This is where the keyframes for the space switching is. I'm just going to set this to constant interpolation. But yeah, now it's following the torso instead of following the root beforehand. And this can work over multiple keyframes as well as if you hit this apply switch to keyframe parents. So if I just want this all of my animation to be changed to the chest space, it changes the keys but keeps the poses. Yeah, I hope this helps. If you have any questions, let me know. This is quite a long tutorial, but hopefully it should cover everything that you need to know from jumping from Maya to Blender. If you want to filter specific curves like the rotate X's and Y's, you can use this search bar and type in XE for Euler rotation, XQ for quaternion. There's two different rotation modes in Blender. Quaternion is a newer one because it kind of prevents gimbal lock, but Euler is the one that Maya uses. So just be aware of that. Quaternion introduces another axis, which is called the W axis. And it's usually on bones that don't need to bend 360 degrees. But if you are animating like a spin or a flip, then those controls will need to be set to Euler, which is over here, XYZ Euler. Yeah. If you have any questions, let me know. I know this was a lot of information, but hopefully it's enough to get you started.